So video editing is a very good and valuable skill to have nowadays. And in this video, I'm going to show you the basics of how to edit a great video in Adobe Premiere Pro. At the end of this video, you should be able to know how to edit a basic but amazing video. So let's get started. So once you open Premiere Pro, this is the first thing that is going to show. And from here, you either want to open a past project or create a new project. For the aid of this tutorial, I'm going to create a new project. Now, once you create a new project, you're going to see this window pop up. All you have to do is just to name your project and the location. So I'm going to name it and I'm going to choose my location. This is where I save most of my project, so I'm going to leave it here. And here you don't really need to change anything here. I just leave my default. So we're going to press OK. So once you open a new project, this is what you're going to see. Now, if this is your first time opening Premiere Pro, make sure that you're using the editing workspace. Now, a workspace is basically how each window is arranged. Now, this is the editing workspace, which is just for basically editing your videos, not color grading or effects. Now, these little rectangles you see here on the screen are called windows. There are different windows in each workspace that are arranged differently. This window here is the project window, and this is where you import all the video or clips or pictures you want to use to edit your video. This is the timeline, and this is where you're going to put all your shots, pictures, or anything you need to include in your video. You're going to put it here. And this is the program monitor. This is where you're going to view what you are editing. The source monitor is basically for viewing what you put in your project window. And this is the toolbar window where you have various tools. But for this video, we're going to use only 3 tools: the selection tool, the eraser tool, and the type tool. So now let's start by importing our footage. Here I have different clips which I shot when my brother was playing games. So for importing, there are different ways to import your clips into your project. Now I'm going to start with the basic way of importing clip. You go to your project window and double click this empty space that says import media to start, and I go to where the videos are located in my PC, which is here, and I select the ones I want to import and I open them. So now you can see that I have each of these shots in my project window. But I have another way which I import clips into my project. Let me start by deleting these ones here. Now when I want to start editing videos, I start by having a folder structure for each of my videos. There's different folders for different purposes. I have one for shorts, music, B-roll, and audio. I'm using the videos in the B-roll folder. So I'm going to reduce the size of this window. I'm going to select the ones I want and I drag them into the project window in Premiere Pro, and it imports them. I prefer this method because it makes my work more efficient and fast, because I have already structured each of the shots and how I'm going to use them. Now, to make your project more organized, you have to make use of bins. Bins are basically folders in Premiere Pro. To create a new bin, you go to this icon here, it says new bin, and click, and you can name the bin. So I'm going to name it B-roll. And I can drag all my clips into that bin. So now that we have the clips that we're going to use, it's time to create a sequence. Now in Premiere Pro, a sequence is called timeline, and you can see the timeline window here. So when I want to create a new sequence, I can either start by dragging this clip to the timeline, and now you can see that I have the clip inside the timeline. But there are other ways of doing that. You can either right click the clip and select new sequence from clip, and it does the same thing. But if you want to properly open a new sequence, here's how to do it. You go to this icon, new item, and you click it and select sequence. Now you can choose the kind of sequence you want. Now I use the DSLR 1080p because my cameras are 1080p, of course. And now you need to know the frame rate of the video that you recorded. For me, I always record in 24 frames per second and 1080p. So when I want to create a new sequence, I always use these settings. If you want to see more, you can go to settings and choose editing mode. Your editing mode, depending on the kind of camera you use, time based, which is frames per second. I use 23.976 frames per second. You can use 24, but most of the cameras that record 24 frames per second is not exactly 24 frames per second, but 23.976, which is why 23.976 is what you see as 24 frames. Now, video frame size, of course, 1920 by 1080 pixels. But when I want to edit a video, I always like my sequence to have the same settings as my shot. So what I do is I right click and I select new sequence from clip. Now I have a sequence with the settings of the video that I recorded. So now I have a video in my timeline and I want to get ready to edit. Now I don't want to start with this clip, so I'm going to delete it by pressing the delete key. So now I'm ready to start editing my video. So I'm going to start my first shot, which is this. And before I put it in the timeline, I'm going to open it up in the source monitor. To do this, double click the shot and you can see that I have it in the source monitor. So basically the use of the source monitor is for selecting the part of the video that you want to use. So I'm going to look for where I want the video to start from, which is from here. Now selecting in the source monitor works with in point and out point. This icon here is for the in point and this here is for the out point. Or you can easily use I and O on your keyboard. So since I want my shot to start from here, I'm going to click this icon and go to where I want it to end, which is somewhere around here, and click this one. And now this part here is the video that I've selected. Now to put it in the timeline, you usually have to click and drag it to the timeline, and there you've selected your first shot that you need to start editing. But what if you want to use only the video and not the audio? Well, you easily have to click this icon and drag it to the timeline. And the same thing for audio, drag it and put it in the timeline. But in this case, I want only my video, so I'm going to drag video only and put it in the timeline. So now we have started editing. So we'll scroll through, and now I want to put another shot, which is the shot of his hand on the pad. So I'm going to go to the source monitor again and select the parts that I want to use, and I'm going to drag it again. Now there are certain controls in the timeline that you need to know to edit, which first of all to zoom in and out of the timeline. Now to zoom in or out on your timeline, you usually do it by dragging this point here. Drag it to this direction to zoom out, or to this direction to zoom in, or you usually hit the plus or minus button on your keyboard. And now to increase the size of this layer, you can just double click on the video track. This whole line here is video track. And now the tracks can go up to 5, 10, 15 depending on the kind of video that you're editing. So I'm going to double click to have it more bigger so that I understand what I'm doing better. You can also do the same with audio, but since we're not adding audio yet, I'm going to leave it like this. Now what I just need to do is to keep adding shots that I'm going to use. So now I've added 5 shots to my timeline, and you can see that I have different shots now, and when I move forward they change due to their duration. Now to view what I've edited, I can easily press this play button here or hit spacebar on my keyboard, and you can see that now it's playing and I can now watch what I've edited so far. Now when you're editing, you might have made a shot too long and you want to shorten it, or a shot is too short and you want to make it longer. Now you do that by trimming. Now to trim a video, you go to the end of the clip. You can see here either the starting, which is here, or the ending. If I want to trim, I'll just click and drag it here. If I want to make it longer too, I'll click and drag it forward, and you can see that now it's shorter if I drag it, and now it's pitch black because there's a gap here and there's nothing in between. And if I go to this shot now, you can see that it's showing in the program monitor. So now I want to make this shot more short. We'll go to this point, maybe around 1.5 seconds, and trim it. Now there is a gap in between this shot and this shot. So now I have to fill in that gap. So what a beginner editor would normally do is to select all this, zoom in and patch it like that. But that's not how you properly fill in a gap, because if your edit is big and there are many layers, you can end up making mistakes. So what you do in this case is ripple delete. Now if I want to clear this gap that's here, I just have to click it and press delete, and now you can see that that gap is taken care of. It's no more there, and I didn't have to start moving each of my shots individually. Now in case there is a video you want to delete, you can easily do it without making a gap on the timeline by pressing shift and delete. Or you might have multiple gaps on the timeline also, and you don't want those gaps to be there. Now to easily do this, you go to sequence here and select close gap, and now it has closed all those gaps automatically for you. So I'm going to undo what I just did and I'm going to continue editing. Now basically at this point I want to trim each of my shots because some of them might be too long or too short. So I'm going to quickly do that. Okay, so now what I have done is I have put different shots and I have trimmed them to how I want it. Now if you want to cut a part of your video, this is where the razor tool comes in. Now I'm going to take you through all the tools that you need to know at basic level to edit a video. I told you at the beginning that we're going to use only 3 tools, which is the selection tool, the razor tool, and the type tool. Now the selection tool is basically for dragging your clips up and down wherever in your timeline, and also for trimming your clips. And the razor tool you just use to cut your clips. For instance, if I want to cut a part of this clip now, I just click where I want it to cut and you can see that it has cut the clip, and now it's a different clip on its own and it's a different selection. But if you don't like the stress of just going here to select your razor tool, you can use a shortcut which is Ctrl K and just cut it without having to pick the razor tool. Now I'm just going to add more shots to the timeline. And now my video is starting to look much better. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is how to increase or decrease the speed of a clip. Now to do this is very easy. Just right click the clip that you want and select speed/duration. And now if I want to increase this clip, I can increase it to maybe 200%, and if I play it back now, you see that it's faster. But now if I want to decrease it, I can increase it to maybe 50%, and now it's much slower. So that's basically how to increase the speed of your video. So now the next thing we're going to be looking at is effect. Now for effects, there are 2 windows that you're going to need which are very important, and that's your effects panel and your effects control. Now this is your effects panel window. This is where you select any effects that you want to use. Effects controls panel is where you modify the effects that you add in your video, or where you want to change the position or the motion of your video. If I want to increase the scale of my video, simply go to scale and increase it. And the same thing for the position. And you can also adjust more things like the rotation of your video just by decreasing or increasing the value. So now let's go over to effects. Now like I said before, the effects panel is where you select the effects you want to use. So in this case now, I want to add a transition from this shot to this shot. Now I'm just going to go to my effects panel. Now if you know the specific effect that you want to use, you can just easily search for it there, and for me this is a cross dissolve effect. But for the aid of this video, I'm just going to locate it by going to video transition, click this and then go to dissolve, and I can use my cross dissolve. So I'm going to add the cross dissolve here, and now you can see that it fades into the other shot. Now I want to add a blur effect to one of the clips by going to video effects, blur and sharpen, Gaussian blur. There are also different kind of blur, so there are different kind of effects. So I'm going to add a Gaussian blur to this shot now, and now I have to adjust it using the effects controls. So now I'm just going to increase the blurriness here, blurriness value, and you can see that now it's getting below So that's basically how to control your effects. So now I'm going to be adding text. Text is very easy to do in Premiere Pro. What I want to do is to select type tool or just press T on your laptop, and I go to the program monitor, click, and you can type what you want to type. This is the text which I just typed. You can see it now in the effects controls panel. In Premiere Pro, once you type a text, it automatically opens a new layer, which is a text layer. So now I select that layer to modify it and change some things about it. So I can really go to text and I can change the font to whatever I want. I'm going to choose this font and also the size, the tracking, and the position. I can edit each of them from this effects controls panel. I can change the color by clicking fill. I can add an outline, which is stroke. Now if you want to get more controls for this text, you double click the text layer, and now that's going to open an essential graphics window. Essential graphics window is basically for graphics like text, and now I can see the text from here. I can also edit the text from here, but I'm not going to use the essential graphics because I can do everything I want to do from the effects control. So now I've added the text and I have positioned it to where I want it. Now you can see the text layer in the timeline. Now I want it to start from the beginning, so I'm going to move it here so that it starts with the first shot from the beginning, then it fades out. So I'm going to go to somewhere here before this shot got to this one. I'm going to go to somewhere here and trim it. And now I'm going to add a cross dissolve transition again so that it fades out. Add it to the end and now reduce the length so that it fades out. So now our video is coming together and is looking pretty good. Now the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is to add in audio. So I'm going to import music to the project. So I'm just going to drag them to the project. And now to add music, you just easily drag it to the audio track. And now you can see the audio and increase it. Now you can see the audio on the timeline. Now it's more than the video, so I'm just going to trim it. Now for audio, obviously you need to know how to increase and reduce the volume of the audio. So there is this line here. Once you extend it, there's this line at the center of the audio spectrum. Dragging it up increases the volume, dragging it down decreases the volume. So if I want to reduce the volume just a little, I'll drag it down, or if I want to increase it, I'll drag it up. But I'm going to leave it at the normal level. Now I'm basically done my edits. What I need to do now is I'm going to put a cross dissolve transition at the beginning of the video and at the end. Text is still there, so I have to add one to the text also. So the last thing I'm going to be showing you now is color. Now when I want to color grade my footage, I easily go to the color workspace. But if you don't want to do that, you can just go to window and lumetric color and click it, because the lumetric color is the main window that I use for my color correction. But if I want to color grade my whole video, then I go to the color workspace. So I'm going to start with the first footage. In your lumetric color, you have different windows and different controls. But for beginner level, I'm just going to use the basic correction. Now here you can see an option that says impute LUT. Now a LUT is simply a video filter for the color of your video. I'm not going to use a LUT because I prefer doing this by myself. So now we're going to start with the white balance controls here. If you have a white element in your shot, I recommend you use this tool, which is the eyedropper tool, and just select something white. And now you can see that it has made the shot look better because it's white balanced. But I sometimes do this by hand because the white balance selector sometimes gives you wrong results. So now we go to the tone, which is the exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks. This is not hard to use because just increasing it and decreasing it already tells you what it does. So for this shot now, I feel it's properly exposed. I'm just going to leave it at 0.1. Contrast is basically separation of colors to make the colors pop more. So I'm going to increase the contrast, and now it's kind of too dark, so I'm going to increase the exposure. And for the highlights, I'm just going to increase it a little bit, just to give it a little touch of brightness. Same thing for the shadows. Going to reduce the shadows, and I don't want to mess with these whites and blacks because I feel the shot already looks good in that area. Now, if you don't want to do all this by yourself, you can easily click this auto button and it automatically color corrects your footage, but most times this gives me bad results. So that's basically it for the color. So I've applied the lumetri color to only one clip in the timeline, but I want the color to be the same throughout my video. So I'm going to select the lumetri color in the effect control, and I'm going to copy it by pressing Ctrl C and then selecting all the remaining shots and pasting it. So now that I'm done with editing, now here comes the last part, which is exporting. So to export, you can choose to quickly export by clicking this quick export button, and now you can just change the file name and location of where it's going to export to and choose the preset. When I'm exporting, I like my settings to be specific, so to do that I'm going to go to File, Export and Media, or you can just press Ctrl M on your keyboard. So now this will open another window. Now when exporting, you can choose to match sequence settings, but I like to choose my settings, so I'm going to go with H.264, which is general format for video. And for the presets, I can choose high quality 1080p since my video is in 1080p, but I like to go with smart source high bitrate. Then I'm going to click this output name, and from here I can choose where I want to save it and also name it. So I'm going to name it, okay, and press save. You can export only the video or only the audio. In this case, I want both my video and audio, so I'm going to leave this one's checked. And now that's basically everything you need to do. Just press export and then your video is done. So that's basically how to edit a video in Adobe Premiere Pro. It's not really hard, you just need to keep practicing and creating more videos. So thank you so much for watching this video and watching till the end, and I hope you learned something new, and now you should be able to edit a great video in Premiere Pro. So if you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe below, and you can comment videos that you also want to see in the future. And before you start editing videos, it's essential to know the basics of using a camera. So if you want to learn how to properly use a camera, then click this video right here, and I will see you in the next video.